Everyone, and welcome to a bonus episode of Old Spook Lang Creepy Chats.
I guess you could say this is a boogeyman bonus.
Yes, it is a boogeyman bonus where we're turning on the juice and see what shakes loose. I am Patricia, and I'm here with Arun from the Arun Show.
Hello there.
And today we're going to be doing part 2 of our discussion of Beetlejuice, the animated series, the 1989 animated cartoon that first featured on ABC. And in season 4, it moved over to Fox Kids. So if you're interested in listening to our discussion of seasons 1 through 3, which was the season that was airing around ABC, then go check out our previous podcast. But today we're going to be taking a look at the 4th season, which was featured exclusively on Fox Kids.
Now, I want to give some background to this, if I may, because you've seen the Fox Kids version, and you grew up with the Fox Kids version?
Yes.
Did you? Okay, I've never seen the Fox Kids version of the show. So this was actually my first time watching, all 64 episodes of, the Fox Kids run. So we effectively got the ABC run of the show, and as far as I'm aware, I mean, I might be wrong about this, I don't think the Fox Kids version of the show actually ran, I don't think, on British TV, at least on free-to-air TV anyway. Fox Kids was available in the UK, so whether it ran in Fox Kids at the time that Fox Kids was available in the United Kingdom, I don't know.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, there was no, UK run of the Fox Kids version of the show. So this is my first time actually watching this, actually.
Now, I'm actually curious, what aired on Fox Kids around the UK in the 90s?
Oh, it was Shaolin Showdown was the main stay of the show, and funny enough, a lot of Disney cartoon shows actually also ran on Facebook as well. We also got Jetix as well, which I think only is an obscure anime, I think, in that, and so it was kind of like a really mixed bag of Disney and very all the obscure shows that didn't really air on mainstream television. It was kind of like the dying days of the children's channel, where we got Stunt Dogs and Felix the Cat, not the early cartoons, the Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat, some of the shows that couldn't get syndication at the time, and but they ended up on Fox Kids. So it was kind of a mixture of those shows. And then eventually Disney shows started appearing on Fox Kids, funny enough, and then eventually became Disney XD.
Interesting.
So that's sort of how Fox Kids basically kind of came about for us. There was various other shows I think that actually were on Fox Kids. Those are the ones I remember the most. I remember the Casper, the modern Casper cartoons as well. I think they were also on Fox Kids.
Okay.
I think I recall.
Yeah, so early years of Fox Kids, you had Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, you had Bobby's World, you had Eek the Cat, Batman the Animated Series.
But if Eek the Cat was actually on the Children's Channel, it was on TCC, not on Fox Kids.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, I think the idea of Fox Kids, I think, was more just it was kind of more zany, more kind of more crazy shows.
Yeah.
A little bit more don't get me wrong, I think Peter and the Panda and the Pirates, I think, was also on Fox Kids as well. But that was already on. We'd already seen it, all the seasons already on free-to-air television on Channel 4. So there wasn't really, there wasn't really a reason to kind of watch, unless you wanted to watch them again as a rerun, on Fox Kids. It wasn't really a drawing power at the time.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, so this was like around the early years of Fox Kids. So again, if you're interested in learning more about Beetlejuice the animated series, go check out the Cracked article where it was an oral history of the animated series where they brought in the cast and crew to talk about this. So, okay, so at this context, in the year 1990, when season 3 of Beetlejuice the animated series was wrapping up on ABC, and funny enough, did you know that Beetlejuice the animated series won an Emmy for Best Animated Show?
Well, yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, it was fun reminiscing about the ABC show because it made me realize how much I loved Beetlejuice back in the time,
Mhm.
and it brought us so many childhood memories of me watching CITV at the time and some of the other shows that I also watched as well. And just getting to go back to Beetlejuice and Lydia, like they have such a wonderful chemistry on screen, and getting to go back to the family, the Neitherworld, with the Ginger, the monster across the street, like all these memories, just these fun memories just came flooding back, and the jokes, even though they are still quite dated, still hold up to this day,
Mhm.
pretty much. And so I think for me it was fun to go back to Beetlejuice, the ABC version anyway. And then when we got to the Fox Kids version, oh, I loved it. I
Yeah, so
absolutely
yeah,
loved
so
it.
let's talk about this briefly with the Cracked article. So, did you know that the cast and crew of Beetlejuice the animated series were working on the production of season 3 and season 4 at the same time?
Well, that wouldn't surprise me, no, because I mean, at the time, there's a reason why you go on streaming sites and it's like, oh, hey, here's this old cartoon. Hey, yeah, wait a second, why does this one season have like 64, 65 episodes? It's like, well, that's the way it was kind of produced at the time.
Yeah.
They ordered like a mass production of episodes that they could just re-air again and again, and also for marathons as well. Because if you remember, like there was all the marathons they like to do, like now where a marathon is no strangers. Like if you're a SpongeBob SquarePants fan, I mean, like strangers marathons. There's even a Nickelodeon channel now dedicated to SpongeBob marathon called Nick SpongeBob.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I mean, like that now that's basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, effectively for us.
Mhm.
But I mean, yeah, back at the time, it was actually kind of a novelty to like have like a Powerpuff Girls marathon, a Dexter's Laboratory marathon, or like a Johnny Bravo marathon, and so I mean to have, I mean that's what TV production, TV channels love to do. They love to like say, okay, studio, mass produce like 60 something episodes, and then we can air them, constantly, and also do a marathon if we want to on a weekend.
Yeah, pretty much. So they were working on 65 episodes of Beetlejuice the animated series within less than a year and a half. So they were doing 2 to 3 episodes every single week.
Yeah, so if you think the production for Batman Beyond was an epic adventure in such a small period of time, good grief, get a look at Beetlejuice, the Fox Kids version.
Yeah. So yeah, so let's talk about some of the changes that were in Beetlejuice on Fox Kids versus the ABC version. The first thing that they changed was the intro.
Yeah, and the intro is more fun. Like like when a show is like it's going to be ramped up, like it's going to be like this is going to be like the more epic, it's you're going to tune it up like to 1,000. Like probably like the craziest like episode was probably like when South Park entered into the 2000s, like you show people like go flying through burning buildings and stuff like that. Like there was the Beetlejuice intro is seriously ramped up. Like you see Beetlejuice like dead in a coffin, and like it's such the freakiest visual that you get. But then when you've seen Beetlejuice before, like it actually looks really cool. Like and then he rises up from the coffin when his name gets raised 3 times, and like he's like going all around the screen, and like he's laughing manically, and it's just so much fun. And also you notice that the theme song is a lot more intense and is a lot more paced, and it just it really takes you into wanting to see the show. Like it's a great intro
It is.
in that. It's what would have been fun though. Like it would have been fun if it had a cold open. Like if they did like a little segment like for Beetlejuice, and then all of a sudden like he just goes to Beetlejuice like that would have been kind of cool to like see. But even without the cold open, which wasn't really done at the time that we were doing shows. I mean, like cold opens now tend to be kind of like a more modern thing. I
Yeah.
think we've only just done it like in the last 20 years.
Yeah, well,
As
King of the Hill I can think of as an example of like in the early seasons they did a cold open and then they cut over to the theme song.
Yeah, exactly. So, the intro to the show just on its own is enough to draw you in. Which, by the way, a show with a really cool intro, an intro can like either kill or make your TV shows to see. I mean, unfortunately, we saw that with Primos as well. Like, they released the intro and it's like, oh, that created so much hate
It did.
amongst maybe, unfortunately, sorry for the, creator of that show.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, your first impressions are always everything.
It is.
Unfortunately, when it comes to, TV audiences. And so, mind you, at this point, we've seen Beetlejuice already on ABC. So to see it on Fox Kids and to see that, you're going to be in for more of a wild ride right off just, the first minute of like watching an episode of Beetlejuice purely because of the intro. Fantastic.
Yeah. And second thing is that it's a lot more consistent with the time run where it's all 24 minutes, whereas seasons 1 through 3, some episodes were 11 minutes long, some episodes were 24 minutes long, and the last episode of season 2 was 3 7-minute episodes. This time in season 4, it's all consistent.
Yeah, and so I think then because I probably imagine that it wasn't their choice maybe to do like 11-minute episodes. That was sort of kind of like the standard at the time. You either did like 5 minutes in a segment, or you did, 11 minutes, and that you would do like 2 episodes, to constantly keep, the kids' attention effectively for that. And it was pretty rare, I think, to go into 22-minute episodes. I think, unless you were doing like a show with a significant budget.
Yeah.
And so I think with this, then they felt like they had like again, I've not watched the documentaries or listened to like the articles or anything like that, like or anything like that. But I probably imagine looking at this compared to the ABC, it looks like they've had far more freedom to like do one 22-minute episode to like say whatever they want at that time, and then move on to the next 22-minute episode, and felt like they could have some kind of consistency to it.
They did actually, because according to again the Cracked article, they had a lot more creative freedom compared to ABC, where there were a lot more.
And it shows.
Yeah, it definitely shows.
Like these guys pull no punches.
No.
In this, they make fun of the industry. They make fun of the horror genre. They recall back to other horror genre. They even recall back to like talking about Shakespeare and talking about they even have to hit like because there was times where they felt like you had to hit like certain educational points in the show. They do that and then some.
We got to talk about that. So around the time of the production of the 4th season, the 1990 rule where they had to have children's shows be a lot more educational came into pass.
And the only reason we found that out is because they dedicated an episode to it. So
yes.
This fairy comes down and enforces all the rules. And it's like, wow. Like, they took the 1990s, television act and they made it into an episode of the show.
Yes.
Incredible.
They did,
my God. and I think that was the Reagan years as well.
It was.
Wow. Like, this guy's a TV actor. He's probably, we're no stranger to guns, if I'm understood correctly.
Right.
Yeah. And here he is enforcing this on Beetlejuice. Like, right. Reagan was such an awful president.
Yeah, so the episode is called Goody Two Shoes, and apparently it's basically their take of bringing up the fact that this act had pretty much came into pass where a lot of these children's shows are deemed as too violent, or we can't do certain things. We need to make it as child friendly as possible. We need to bring some moral lessons and education into it. And then Beetlejuice comes along and just flips the middle finger.
Exactly, yeah, but I mean, it doesn't do it like it kind of makes the point of like, here's this character who is going to enforce the rules of the television act, and this is how awful it actually is. And if anything, like, a lot of TV shows actually, when the television act was coming in, actually started doing this. I remember other episodes of cartoon shows that also made references to the fact we can't do this anymore and we can't do that anymore. And if anything, it kind of like, as far as I'm aware, this act is no longer in use.
No, it's not.
So, like, if anything, it did have the desired effect, I guess you could say. But the one thing the great thing about Beetlejuice having the creative freedom to do whatever they like, they were able to like provide not only commentary on the cartoon industry, which, by the way, for the 6 to 11 demographic, that's going to fly over their heads. I mean, like, we only now appreciate it today, so like, it's 30-something-year-olds. But I mean, the fact that they had the creative freedom to go anywhere they liked and tell a message that they really wanted to get out to everybody, the fact that they were able to give us a whole round cast of characters and even make fun of like some of the stereotypes that are out there. Claire Brewster, by the way, gets a lot of punishment in this show.
She does.
And it's funny because they put her up as like, I do remember like, characters like Claire Brewster being protagonists of shows. And like, here's, this character. By the way, she was in the ABC version of the show. They didn't just bring her in specifically for the Fox Kids version, but they did make her more prominent in the show
They
as the
actually made a
antagonist.
lot of characters more prominent in this
Yeah,
season.
I mean, like a Scuzzo. I mean, mind you, even though I said in the previous one that Scuzzo I found problematic, for obviously aesthetic reasons. But I mean, he is one of the main bad guys in the show. I
Yes.
mean, along with Mr. Monitor and along with some of the other ones that we have, and also they make the effort to not only make these villains, obviously come in and out, but they give them somewhat a bit of an explanation about like why they're there, what purpose they sell, like what they even did like quite a hilarious like take on the Legion of Doom at one point, and they put them all together to like create what was it called, the thing called like
Like
snot rag or
yeah,
something like that.
snot rag.
Was it rag? Oh, that was hilarious. And so they did really good well with the villains. They actually expanded the universe as well. The one thing I think, I don't know whether this was a good thing or whether it was a bad thing, but the majority of the ABC run actually did take place not just in the Neitherworld, but took place in the human world as well. And we, with the some exceptions of episodes, we don't really get too many adventures in the real world.
Well, the reason why, according to the Cracked article, was because they had this creative freedom, and because the show was called Beetlejuice, they wanted to focus more episodes on Beetlejuice.
Yeah, but I mean, like the fun thing about Beetlejuice is that he's not he's just this ghost with the most, which he could haunt the humans in the world, and it was quite hilarious. Like they explored more of Mr. Beetleman, in this, and also Betty Juice as well, and also, I mean, funny enough, like did cousin BJ actually appear as like one of the personas in this? Actually,
No.
that's hilarious. Actually, like cousin BJ, I think had probably a lot of potential in this, and
Yeah,
he doesn't make an appearance in this version.
not at all. Betty Juice only appears once. Mr. Beetleman appears a couple of times. They even introduced Grandpa Beetleman.
Oh yeah, Grandma Beetleman's hilarious.
But
I love that.
yeah, but cousin BJ doesn't make one appearance in season 4.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I would have thought they would have. To make Beetlejuice more relatable, you would have thought they would turn into a kid a couple of times. But Betty Juice seems to have made more appearances than than in the entirety of the show.
I guess it
Than
makes a
cousin
little bit of
BJ, I
sense
guess.
because on the very few times that we got into the real world, they actually went over to school.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it makes you wonder. Like, I wonder if they realized that there was quite a. I mean, I've never seen the Nielsen ratings or like the demographic surveys or anything like that. But they must have been aware. There must have been quite a significant female following for the show if they were going to basically make Betty Juice.
well,
I would have thought. I don't know, but I get why Betty Juice exists. She's there to basically be the so she's Betty. Beetlejuice can be a girl in the girls' school.
yes.
I understand that, but I don't know. Like, it makes me wonder. Like, were they aware that maybe there's quite a significant female following for Beetlejuice and not just a boys kind of like demographic?
Well,
I
I
guess
mean,
I don't know.
I don't know how it was in the UK, but when I was a kid growing up with a lot of these shows in the 80s and 90s, there seemed to be a massive divide about like what shows could you watch because you're a boy and what shows can you watch when you're a girl. It's like, okay,
That's true.
if you're a boy, you're going to be into He-Man and you're going to be
Cops.
yeah, Cops or Teenage Mutant
Ninja
Turtles.
Transformers as well.
Yeah,
Even though
G.I. Joe.
funny enough, there's female fans of Transformers, even with the '80s show, I believe.
That is true, yeah. But
Yeah.
then when you have the girls, it's like, okay, you're gonna have My Little Pony, you're gonna have
She-Ra,
Strawberry Shortcake,
Strawberry Shortcake, She-Ra as well.
She-Ra.
I'm not talking about Princess of Power. I'm talking about like there was a female version of He-Man called She-Ra.
Yes.
I mean, anyone who's fan of Princess of Power obviously know the backstory of that. But
Yeah. Somewhere out there, someone needs me. Okay, yeah, the movie. But anyway, there's also that and Rainbow Bright and Care Bears.
Enough, actually. I might be, confessing something here. I mean, like, we had the Rainbow Bright movie on VHS,
Nice.
and I actually didn't mind it, actually.
Okay.
Like, it was, I mean, I like the idea of, like, here's this girl, like, who's on this adventure, like, when she was rainbows and stuff, and then, like, it's like, yeah, she said, she sounded like a video game character at the time, so it was, like, in a way, she was kind of cool.
Yeah, but anyway, the point is that at the time, there seemed to have been like a massive divide about, like, what shows were catered to boys and what shows were catered to girls. And
Yeah.
it was the early 90s. And Kevin and I actually talked about this
Well,
years ago.
this was the era when, like, you had the sports movie, and like, what's the one cliche that the sports movie always had? The girl's joining the boys' team, and she's gonna kick everybody's ass, and
Yes.
like, that's where we were in the '90s at the time. So,
Yeah,
like, yeah,
let's see, we had Little Giants, there was The Big Green, there was A League of Their Own, which came out at the time, which featured an all-female baseball team in the 1940s, which, by the way, it's actually funny that that's kind of now relevant because in 2026, they're actually going to bring back the Women's Baseball League, which is
yeah.
actually kind of crazy.
But the thing about this is the reason why we're bringing this up is because Beetlejuice did something that very rarely did any other show kind of do, and that's bringing both boys and girls sort of into the same room,
It did.
if you will. And because it's always been like, here's the boy blue things and here's the girl pink things, and I mean, it's sort of still like that to this day, but in some way, shape, or form. But Beetlejuice, funny enough, I mean, you mentioned the animated series, and it brings in like a good, healthy, the demographic of people who grew up with the show.
Yes.
And I mean, also, it's not just a United States show. It would be in the UK also we had it, and also around the Europe we had it as well. I mean, I believe it's been broken down into different also languages as well.
Oh, nice.
I think. I mean, it has gone quite the distance in regards to the reach around the world. So, yeah, I mean, like, Beetlejuice had, even now with Beetlejuice, it's got a lot of more fans now, than it probably, it went quiet for a while, and then all of a sudden it's now made this big comeback, thanks to the second movie.
And the Broadway
And
musical.
the Broadway musical as well. I got to give, I've not seen the Broadway musical yet. Actually, we're waiting for it to come to the UK at some point. I think it has been in the UK at one point, and we kind of missed the boat, but
Yeah, we did.
yeah, I would like it to come back.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know that they're going to be doing their US run, but as for like a European run anywhere, we haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah, but hopefully it'll be very soon. So,
Yeah, very, very soon.
yeah.
But yeah, I guess some other things that we need to mention about the differences. I mean, you were mentioning before about that there's not a lot of episodes focusing on the human world, which is true because you have like maybe a handful of episodes and then maybe like later on they would go over to the Neitherworld for some reason. Like, okay,
Well, on top of that, like, yes, they brought human characters into the Neitherworld. And
yes.
funny enough, they didn't really care too much about like what was going on. Like, it's funny because they seem to portray the humans in Peaceful Pines as kind of like not all there and like quite accepting of things. It's like yeah, like you got this really ugly dead thing in front of you, and you would have thought they would have freaked out over it. I mean, don't get me wrong, they do freak out at certain things when they realize what's in front of them, but for everything, they kind of give a lot of things the pass, really.
Yeah, like there was one episode
They're a very accepting small little town in the USA. It's not
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, kind of interesting. I mean, you would think that, this little tiny town in Connecticut would be like all freaked out. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for somebody like Charles because he's always freaking out, but you have, Delia who's just okay with it because she's so artistic. And then you have the girls from the school who are more or less okay with it, especially with Prudence and Bertha, especially in that one episode in which we have this this field trip that their girls are going to where they're going into like this huge history town, and Beetlejuice is introducing the girls with all these historical reenactments of various times in history, and it's taking place in the Neitherworld. And then you have Prudence and Bertha who are just like, okay, I'm bored of this, can we go over to the next thing, or this is really fascinating, I want to learn more about this. And of course Claire, being Claire, is freaking out.
Yeah, exactly. And there was one hilarious thing that happened. Like they were they're in a golf tournament.
Oh,
Like, it
yes.
was like the golf tournament episode is hilarious, by the way. And so there's this one scene where Claire Brewster gets dragged down to the Neitherworld for a sand a sand trap of all places, and it's just like Lydia goes, well, where's he gone? It's like, I just said in the Beatles' voice, she I killed her. Oh god, that would be something that would happen in the Beetlejuice movies, but yeah, but it's just the one thing it's such a fun watch in Beetlejuice. Like, you can just sort of somebody like put in your own little jokes in as well, and that's what I find fun in a show, when you feel like you can have fun with it yourself, and it's not just the show having fun with you,
Yeah.
if anything. So it's a nice little interactive thing that you can have going with Beetlejuice, and okay, you can kind of make fun of like some of the dated stuff, and you can kind kind of make fun of like certain narratives that's a place in the show, and you've got to give it like some forgiveness, because again, it is an early 90s show. Like it's not it's not the Owl House, it's not Amphibia, and it's not Gravity Falls by any stretch of the imagination. But it's still a solid show, and I would, if you ask me, oh, do you want to watch some episodes of Beetlejuice, I'd be game
Yeah.
for watching it whenever. Like it's fantastic. Even the the one thing I was worried about, I don't know if you felt like this, Patricia, is that with certain shows when you have a really great premise, and you have creative minds that are all buzzing away and everything like that. I mean, I do argue that you need some sort of like creative control, or like some sort of like man who sits in the middle and says, okay, well, you can get away with this, but you're going a bit too far with this certain thing. Let's tone it down to this so it's acceptable for like we can get it through the powers that be, if you will, or get it acceptable for television, or like this will go really well for an audience demo if we get through that. I always think that something like that is a very unfortunate component that we have that for the creative process. The one thing I was a bit worried about the Fox Kids version. I'm not saying that this happened in this show. I was a bit worried that, with that filter removed and everybody being able to kind of like, the lunatics effectively are running the asylum. I was a bit worried about that this show would go completely and utterly off the rails. And in certain places it does, but it does it to a fact where you can understand it, you can go along with the characters, you can, accept it as that's part of the Neitherworld, or that's part of like Beetlejuice's thing. And if there's one thing that kind of goes against it a little bit with that creative process, is that the continuity sort of suffers for it. And because 2 episodes there was a references to Beetlejuice's funny bone. There was one that had a dedicated episode to it, and about what would happen if his funny bone was removed, and he would cause chaos and all that. And if the funny bone went to somebody else, like Scuzzo, for example, like the whole thing would go crazy and everything like that. And but then there was a part where they referenced the funny bone again, but it wasn't the funny bone character of Beetlejuice. It was just a part of him that was just kind of like part of him, and it didn't really like go into the continuity of like what we saw previously in the same run of the show.
Yeah.
Effectively, so that's a problem. I think that goes against Beetlejuice a little bit, is that while you can do lots of funny gags and things like that, I think when you start bringing things up but then bringing it up again, knowing that you've seen it prior, I think that's when the continuity suffers. And I think that's where it's going, because you and I actually said that a couple of times, like, wait a second, this wasn't this before
Yeah.
in this, and that happens a couple of times in this Fox Kids version of it. I would say the ABC version, I think, was a little bit more linear. I think a bit more solid, I think, in the way that they carried on the story. And by the way, the ABC version of the show actually has a little bit of character evolution in this. The one thing I'll give the Fox Kids version a bit of a problem with is that some characters will learn a lesson, but then it will just unlearn it, like either in the next episode or like at the very end of the episode.
Yeah.
If you will. I was really hoping that was going to be some character evolution for Claire Brewster, for example.
Yeah, like there was one episode that we really did enjoy, which was the foreign exchange episode, where there was this foreign exchange student named Alex who came from a Scandinavian country. Which Scandinavian country? I don't know.
Scandinaviaville.
Yeah, sure.
Scandinaviavania.
Anyway, so yeah, so we have Claire, who is really, really excited for this Scandinavian foreign exchange student to come by over to Peaceful Pines. And oh no, she thought it was going to be some rich, hunky guy, but it's a girl. And oh, this girl talks funny.
I love how Claire Brewster is so detached from reality. The person she didn't realize she was writing to this entire time was a girl. Yeah. It's like, and you're saying, oh, hey, I think this person's a hunk. It's like, which side of the team are you banning there for, Claire? It's like, hey, early, references to lesbianism. Okay.
No, no.
But that wasn't it. It's just the idea was that Claire Brewster is so detached from reality, she doesn't even realize the person she's writing to is actually the opposite sex of what she thinks it is.
Yeah, and so she basically just makes fun of this girl. She teases her. She says, "Oh, this is the tradition that we do in America." And she feels like really, really bad. And so Lydia decides to give Claire a taste of her own medicine by sending her over to another foreign country, which in reality is just
It's
the
the Neither
Neitherworld.
world, exactly. Oh, but the flight getting there and her landing in the Neither world is just and also they could easily just like poof effectively to the Neither world, but they don't. They like where they go all out on it. Like there's the horrendous plane, the horrendous in-flight movie, the horrible food. Oh, like it's disgusting.
And the plane almost crashing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just and it's like these budget airlines, am I right? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so one
You could
thing.
say they flew Spirit Airlines.
Wow, way to bring that up.
Oh goodness.
Anyway, so yeah, you would think that, oh, and there's going to be an introduction of this prince from this unknown world. It's like, oh, Prince Vince is going to be in this episode.
But this would be an ideal thing for Prince Vince, wouldn't he?
He never shows up in the Fox Kids version.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe it was kind of a bit, maybe they thought it was kind of a bit creepy, like having like this, I don't know how old Prince Vince is, but at one point he falls in love with Lydia. Like
He does.
Lydia is 13 in this show.
She is, yeah.
Yeah, it's like no, that's another thing as well. I felt a bit uncomfortable. Like there was a lot of monsters that kind of fell in love with Lydia. And it's like dude, she's not. She's not of consenting age.
No, she's not. In
No.
fact, they actually did have another episode in this season. Bing Bong, the King Kong monster.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of like, don't get me wrong, like, there's like female characters who like, are kids in shows who have like, things that fall in love with them and stuff. But like, even then, it kind of doesn't, the fact that they seem to be portrayed as kind of like older and like, if they're kids, that's fine. Like, it's just, comedic crushes for like, age appropriate, children.
Yeah.
But like, when it's kind of like they're portrayed as kind of like adults or like, men with like certain responsibilities like kings or princes or like giant creatures or whatever. It's like it's just nah, like it's not right.
Anyway, so okay, again, Prince Vince doesn't show up in the series. Instead, it's Beetlejuice disguising himself as this prince, and he's like really, really creepy. And he has Claire doing all these things, and she's really freaked out. And then she's wondering, like, why do I have to do all this stuff? And it's like, oh, in our country, this is normal. And then she decides that she's doesn't want to deal with this anymore, and so she's poofed back into her home, and because she's dirty and ugly, her parents don't even accept her.
Exactly, yeah, that's awful. Really. You know what? It's funny because that would have been an interesting character trait to go into. Claire Brewster is is the reason why she's so shallow is because she basically that's how her parents brought her up effectively. Like you have to be like pretty and powerful, and you have to be this certain thing in order to be accepted in our family.
Yeah,
and it would be cool to like say if Claire had like a breaking point at some point and said like I can't keep doing this anymore, I need someone to console it. And maybe this could have been an opportunity. Maybe if it went on for a bit longer, and let's be honest, I mean you can't really keep this show any longer going because it already nearly went to 100 episodes, 94 episodes in total, so I can sort of understand like why it ended the way that it ended. But I mean, at the same time, it would have been nice if they did Beetlejuice again. Maybe the same way that they did She-Ra, Princess of Power. Like some of the characters that we had, like Prudence, like Claire Brewster, like Bertha, and some of the other like side characters. It would be nice to like see some character evolution. Don't get me wrong, Prudence gets like a lot of character evolution in like when you find out like she's like this metalhead.
Yeah, exactly.
But it would have been nice if we got to see other sides of characters and but Claire, unfortunately, and this is not, I get it's unfair to like criticize because obviously a lot of shows at this time only gave us kind of like certain dimensions of characters and not really too much ingrained into them. But it would be nice to like see maybe Claire go through sort of like not a redemption, but kind of like get an understanding of like, oh hey, maybe being pretty and being like the top is not all that it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, I mean, especially since she was really close of getting to that point, especially when Alex came by and she decided to put her in a nice dress and do her hair, and she was brought into the party, and she apologized to Alex saying that, I'm sorry I treated you like this. I'm going to treat you better. And we were thinking, okay, Claire maybe finally learns her lesson, but no, the later episodes, Claire hasn't learned a single thing.
Yeah, which is sad, really, because it would have been nice. I mean, obviously, I would have been nice if she still had like that spunk with her in a way, and like she still felt like she was high and mighty herself because she still has those like traits that she's those like poisonous traits that she's still trying to get rid of. But it would have been nice if they'd actually kept her like, oh hey, she's learned something in this episode, and this is the way that it's going to go for like for the rest of the show.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, shows like this don't do that.
No,
So
not
yeah,
really,
you
unfortunately.
you got to give it the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, other changes that I saw in this series that I thought was, I mean, I'm still kind of on the fence on how I feel about it. Where you said that in the ABC run, Beetlejuice felt like he learned a lot from Lydia by becoming a little bit more stable and following a little bit in his morality. Lydia actually starts becoming really sadistic.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the one thing I noticed is that they really rub off on one another, and so Lydia starts to be kind of a bit more like more like Beetlejuice, and Beetlejuice ends up kind of being a bit more like Lydia in a way. Like he sort of like when he's not scheming and scamming and stuff like that, like he does actually have a very good soft spot for like certain people in his life, and the same thing definitely with Lydia as well in that regard. But then you see Lydia like the one thing I really loved about was when we went to the episode where her grandmother turns up, and Lydia has this idea of what she thinks old people should do, and she gets that from her dad because her dad kind of brought her up to think that's what old people do.
Yeah.
So you get to see, and it's funny because that's a character trait. The one thing I think that Lydia was always portrayed as is that Beetlejuice would obviously do something really terrible, but Lydia would come in and say, be the voice of reason and say, Beetlejuice, you do not do that. And even though I find it funny, but in this case, it's that Beetlejuice actually does the reverse in this episode, which is a first really for with this chemistry. So you have Lydia who is going overboard and thinking, oh, I know what my grandmother wants, and I know what all these old people want to do, and we're going to do something settled and nice, and we're going to do something that is effectively boring for them. And so because she thinks that's the way we should treat old people, but Beetlejuice is the one saying, no, where your grandmother actually is very exciting and where wants to some adventure in her life and everything. So if anything, we get the reverse of
Yeah.
what's going on, and even Beetlejuice even goes to the degree of like making himself an elderly person in himself. That's the reason we get Grandpa BJ effectively, and so I actually like that because they do a role reversal in this episode, and also the one thing I'll say about the relationship between Beetlejuice and Lydia is that it does get testy at times because Beetlejuice kind of gets annoyed with the fact that Lydia sometimes doesn't have enough time to spend time with him. And then Lydia at the same time gets so annoyed with some of Beetlejuice's schemes that she, gets so angry that she walks out and doesn't talk to him until he starts apologizing.
That's right. Yeah, there was
So
actually
there's a
one.
bit of tension actually more in the Fox Kids version than there is in the ABC version.
Yeah, like for example, Beetlejuice is at the lowest point in his life where, all the pranks that he's trying to do is not working out. And so he talks over to Lydia, but Lydia's busy. And so he wishes that, his friends didn't get to know him. And so we have this whole It's a Wonderful Life parody where basically Beetlejuice gets to see what his life is like, basically like non-existent. And we see that Jacques is the maitre d' and this owner of this restaurant, and he's known as Jacques LaLean because he's fat. And then we have Ginger, who becomes this really popular dancer, and Lydia is basically having zero confidence in herself at school, and so Beetlejuice tries to give her confidence, but it doesn't seem to work. And the monster across the street is really successful. It's like everybody is doing great without Beetlejuice except for Lydia.
Lydia. And by the way, I mean that's how important Beetlejuice thinks of Lydia because he wants to instill confidence in her, and when you see that Beetlejuice is taken away and and Lydia, then she just gets kicked around and she's on her own and she's sad and just feels like she wants someone to not just have a fun time with, but also kind of consoling as well. Because funny enough, like there are some moments where Lydia will show some soft side, and Beetlejuice, rather than like making some kind of fun out of it, he'll actually like sort of like be that kind of like that fun uncle, if you will, like to say, cheer up, babes, this, that, and the other, and actually we'll try and cheer Lydia up. So like he really is a good friend.
Yeah.
Even though he's a crazy psychopathic ghost.
Yeah, and there are plenty of times in this series that Lydia has been fed up with Beetlejuice's crap. I mean, there was even one episode. Oh, by the way, in this season, we actually get introduced to Beetlejuice's brother Donnie.
Oh yeah, Donnie, and oh, he's like he just is just creepy, isn't he? In his own way, like how nice he is to everybody, not realizing how or, in one episode, where he's actually doing a lot of damage to people, with like just growing these random trees, and Beetlejuice is in the conundrum of like I can hand this guy in for like and make a ton of money, or he's my brother, if you will,
Yeah,
and
and Lydia's trying to convince him, don't do that. He's your brother.
yeah.
And Beetlejuice is like, I can make $1 zillion off of him because I hate him.
Exactly, and oh, Donnie though is absolutely hilarious in the way that he's just like he in a way he is like Beetlejuice, but he's just he's really nice about it, but uncomfortably nice. I
Yes.
think is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, he is the chaotic good of this situation, where Beetlejuice is kind of like the chaotic neutral, where, he's leaning more towards sometimes being really sadistic and really pranky, but at the same time, he does have a soft spot. While Donnie is just pure chaotic good, where he's just way too nice for his own good, and everybody just finds him really, really creepy. I mean, you would think that a guy like Donnie would be like, oh, this is supposed to be like somebody that we look up to and a role model, kind of like what, again, the 1990 act wanted to have, where all the people were so nice and goody two shoes and everybody learned a lesson and everybody's nice to each other and nobody's mean, nobody says any
Oh,
nasty
by the
words.
way, there's episodes in this show that make fun of other shows. One of them ends up being on many times Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yes, they
Yeah.
make fun of that show so much because of just how cynically sweet
It
it is.
makes you wonder because you and I have seen the Mister Rogers documentary, and we saw how much him being made fun of took a bit of a toll on his mental health at the time. Because obviously where they did Mr. Robinson on a Saturday Night Live, and were by Eddie Murphy, and then obviously now you got this from Beetlejuice, and unfortunately towards like the rebellious '90s, where when people wanted to kind of like see a counterculture kind of like thing, Mister Rogers unfortunately was kind of like seen as like part of the establishment, if you will, of television.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it kind of makes me wonder, like, I mean, they are, don't get me wrong, like, they are hilarious and, like, in the context of Beetlejuice, in that, but it kind of makes me wonder, like, given the fact that we know how Mr. Rogers kind of felt about all that kind of stuff, it makes you kind of feel a bit uncomfortable in some instances.
Yeah,
The fact
I
that
mean,
he took it so personal. I mean, it's like the one thing I'd say about that is that I mean, don't get me wrong. I think we all love Fred Rogers. He's that nice neighbor that you always want to be nice to, and he's we all love the jumper and everything like that. I get that, but we all got everyone in TV got made fun of at some point. Like good grief, the amount of Barney parodies that are out there, for that. So I mean, like, I would just say to him, like, Beetlejuice, making fun of Mr. Rogers is like, well, he kind of like makes fun of everybody in a way. Like, he always has a caricature of somebody. He does Gene Simmons, with quite a few. No, not Gene Simmons. What the
Richard
Richard
Simmons.
Simmons? Yeah, he does Richard Simmons a couple of times, and like, what that's it's funny. Like, on that subject, I'm sorry to keep flipping gears, but in a way, Beetlejuice is sort of kind of like the prototype to Robin Williams' genie from Aladdin, if you think about it. Like, he could transform himself into like, also one of the things he definitely does is, Rodney Dangerfield as well.
Yes, he does. That
Yeah,
is an
that,
obscure reference.
yeah, like, well, I mean, Rodney Dangerfield, I mean, like, he was a thing in the time of the '90s, like, where he was making appearances, like, in movies and, like, the occasional cameo in, like, the shows, also there was Robert Dangerfield as well,
Oh,
which, I mean, the less we think about that, the better, though. I mean, like, he was a fixture, like, in
sure.
the '90s, and also he got to mention in Aladdin as well, like, as we were talking about before.
Yes.
But the one thing I'd say about, I mean, dare I say, I think Beetlejuice sort of like it makes me wonder, like, did when they made Aladdin, I mean, did they ever look at Beetlejuice, the animated series, and think, oh, hey, that could be something that we could potentially do, and Robin Williams would basically be someone who could potentially like pull that off, if you will.
I mean,
So
who knows
it's
at this
interesting.
point? Yeah. So I think another thing that I guess you brought this up, but another major thing that Beetlejuice made fun of was Disney.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, everyone was making fun of Disney at
But
that
yeah,
point
but
because
this was
you
back
keep, keep,
then.
keep this in mind. Well, one of the villains is effectively like a caricature of Minnie Mouse, of sorry, Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, Bartholomew
But
Bat.
Bartholomew Bad, yeah, and it was making fun of the fact that this is the guy from yesteryear who's all washed up, and now he's still got like these. By the way, this was just before. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy that they would make fun of Disney because, like, isn't this like, didn't Beetlejuice the animated series take place during the like, the beginning of the Renaissance era?
Yes.
Keep this in mind, the Renaissance era hadn't really caught on yet. Like,
No,
The Little Mermaid was a big success. Don't
yeah.
get me wrong, and then obviously, like,
Rescuers Down Under.
Rescuers Down Under was a little bit of like a bit of a like, not a false dawn. I'm trying to find the best word for it. It was a bit like it didn't well, it wasn't as successful as like the Little Mermaid, and so it was kind of like a bit of a hiccup in the Renaissance era. So Disney didn't really get to like back to prominence like right off the bat of the Little Mermaid. I mean, it took a few more movies before it's like, oh wow, Disney is back.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
at the time, Beetlejuice was going to make fun of Disney because at the time a lot of people were doing it, and so because everyone was giving Disney a kicking because good grief, like this was the same movie that just a couple of years ago made the Black Cauldron.
Yeah.
So
Black,
yeah.
pretty much so. Black Cauldron and pretty much a lot of the Disney films that were coming out after Disney's death wasn't exactly lighting anybody's world on fire.
What would Walt do?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Beetlejuice will tell you what Walt would do,
Yeah,
and
but
so
I think more specifically they were making fun of like the
yeah, I'm surprised they didn't like say, "Oh, hey, it's Walt Disney from the in the Neitherworld," and like make some more fun of that. I'm
oh
really surprised
god,
they didn't actually go. I don't know, maybe there would have been copyright issues if they did that. Like
probably.
who knows?
Yeah, but they essentially kind of like made fun of like the theme park itself. It's like, okay,
Mm.
here's parking. Walk 20 miles so you can go to the theme park. Okay, well, you have this really small theme park and the main attraction is this cartoon character that nobody remembers for decades. And
Oh, he's not that small anymore, though. That's for sure. Yeah.
and oh yeah, we need to have the attractors wear these hypnotic glasses so that everybody loves Bartholomew Bat.
Yeah, well, that was at the time, like, the Disney diehards were, like, trying to convince everybody, like, oh, no, Disney is still a thing, this, that, and the other, because I grew up with it, and it was good at that time, and, Walt Disney's still alive, his head's, he's frozen somewhere, yada, 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 like, there was the Disney cultists, let's be honest about that, and, Beetlejuice makes fun of those people, like, all hell, like, they think that they're people, like, who wear glasses and, where they're all hypnotized and stuff like that, like,
Yeah.
it's that. So, I mean, there's no surprise that, that's, was something the Beetlejuice was made fun of because at the time, everyone thought, like, what, you're still a fan of, you're still, a massive fan of Disney? You're crazy. Like, they haven't done anything in, like, look at what's happened in the last, couple, like, the last 20 years, before, obviously, we got the Little Mermaid. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and remember that this series ended a few months before Beauty and the Beast came out.
Exactly, yeah. So, well, it kind of makes you wonder, like, because a lot of things, do I say, like, we now have an appreciation for Fred Rogers. We now have more of appreciation for this because of the Renaissance era. Do you think maybe Beetlejuice somewhat died because, I mean, again, because, a lot of the things that they made fun of effectively kind of became cool again in a way. Like, because obviously the only outlier I would say out of that is probably Rodney Dangerfield, and probably like maybe a couple of caricatures that Beetlejuice made fun of. But a lot of people that I believe that Beetlejuice, or at least a lot of things that Beetlejuice would make jokes of, sort of kind of made a comeback in the 90s and the 2000s
Yeah, I
in
did.
a
I
way.
mean, like they were talking about like, oh, Shakespeare's like nobody understands Shakespeare.
Yeah, unless you went to school.
Yeah. But nowadays there's a lot more books that you can be able to read through so that you can get a comprehension of what Shakespeare is about. And Shakespeare plays are still popular to this day. Like you can see a whole bunch of Shakespeare plays being performed on stages and in parks and various locations. There's still to this day various movie adaptations on Shakespeare plays.
Good, great. I still get people who say that they're still fans of like the Leonardo DiCaprio Romeo and Juliet. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know why,
I don't
but
know why
I
either.
don't know why either. That's a crazy. That's a crazy movie.
Yeah, that is
I've seen that
insane.
quite a few times actually. The Leonardo DiCaprio version of Romeo and Juliet. It was the thing that was like on TV quite a lot of the time actually when it first came out.
Yeah, but now since then there have been a lot of modern contemporary movies that have been inspired by Shakespeare. So there's Shakespeare's stuff is still timeless to this day, and they've made fun of Edgar Allan Poe, where they were saying like his stuff is like really confusing with we have the bump the beating of the heart, and you have the crow saying nevermore, and you have Edgar Allan Poe himself crying over Lenore, and Beetlejuice is constantly waking up from constant dream after dream after dream. And, it's like, okay, well, that's a nice little reference to it. And, they were even making fun of the Wizard of Oz, talking about all the strange stuff that is around it. And yeah, there was a lot of like these references to various movies, TV shows, and books that they were like poking fun of or making parodies of at the time, which nowadays are like considered classics nowadays.
Yeah. So the one thing actually I was looking at here, and actually one thing that maybe we should go on with that because it's quite a significant review on IMDb is that whatever happens to the Maitlands in this show?
Yeah,
Which I would say that well keep this in mind. Like in this show, it's sort of kind of made out that Lydia's mother is not like her stepmother. It's like it's her actual mom.
yes.
So I think in anything like I think the while Beetlejuice the animated series has elements of Beetlejuice of the movies in it. It's not actually the movie.
No, it's not.
Like so exactly yeah. So I think where there were no Maitlands and there were no like as far as we're aware like they moved into this house and Lydia's just had Beetlejuice like kind of like around her for ever since they kind of like been in Peaceful Pines.
Yeah,
I guess.
it's like a prototype of the Ghost and Molly McGee.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that's an interesting question. How do you think it compares to the Ghost of Molly McGee?
It's actually funny because I've actually been seeing several episodes of it, and I think that in a way, if you have Lydia more cheerful and you take a little bit of the cynicism of Beetlejuice and like turn it down a little bit lower, less on the jokes and a little bit more on the cynical part of it. And I guess it could be sort of like, I mean, it takes place in a small town
Yeah.
and you have a little girl with a ghost and you have her going to school with friends. Occasionally they would go over to the ghost world and interact with other ghosts there. So I guess you could say that. The only difference is that it's not as wacky as insane as it is.
No, it isn't.
It's more heartfelt.
Yeah, it is, and I think I would say the thing with Molly McGee, like she's such like a wacky character, and by the way, there's an explanation for this because she's never really settled into like a city. She's moved all over America, and she's never really had like a settled set of friends, and this normal interaction, I guess, with other kids. I guess you could say. So that's sort of kind of like messed up a little bit of her social life, and she doesn't really she feels a bit like has a bit of anxiety, like how to actually react. It
Yeah,
kind of
and as
explodes in this way. Lydia doesn't have that
yeah, and
because
as
her confidence comes from Beetlejuice.
yeah, pretty much, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, so for all the people who have been saying about like where the Maitlands in this animated series are more or less gonna say, well, guess what? Ginger, Jacques, the monster across the street, Poopsie, Scuzzo, Donnie, they're not in Beetlejuice. So
Yeah, like it would be interesting, like if they decided to make. I mean, there's quite a few references actually in Beetlejuice to Beetlejuice the animated series. So there are some references, that go into the new movie from the actual TV show. So those exist, and but I mean, I would also say that who knows, maybe in the third movie, maybe there might be an opportunity for them to do something like that. Maybe.
I don't know.
So I mean, there's that possibility.
That is a possibility, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so again, I would say that there are some, drastic differences, but there are some similar things. Like, you have the heart of Beetlejuice and Lydia together as friends, and you have
Hmm.
the wacky adventures in the Neitherworld, and you have all of these dynamics with all the different characters. The only difference is that they have a lot more creative freedom to have different types of adventures. It's able to stretch out a little bit longer, and yeah, the format is more or less the same. It's just that they were able to play around with it more.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that with the I'm really glad that they took the creative liberties that they did with Beetlejuice because my biggest fear is that they could have easily made this like the movie where like you have Lydia who basically just keeps like getting constantly like annoyed or tortured, I guess you could say, by this bioexorcist. And I'm really glad they didn't do that, making them both friends and making them go like on these crazy adventures and having Lydia like effectively like not playing it like with Timmy Turner and the Very Odd Parents or anything like that. Like this isn't like some ghost that just grants wishes or anything like that. Like because Lydia is like totally utterly miserable and doesn't know what to do with her life. It's nothing like that at all. Like it's more the fact that where Lydia like lives like I guess you could say a normal sort of kind of like life of like being a bit socially awkward and not really being in with like the main crowd, if you will, in school. And she thinks that no nobody really understands her all that well, and is sort of kind of like not self-isolated, but he's like trying to grow into her own person and trying to like figure out who she is. And alongside of that, to help her out with, her personality, she's got Beetlejuice,
Yeah.
like to give her confidence of like, of her independence and her, her appreciation of, things that she likes and everything. So, if anything, making Beetlejuice like her companion rather than her adversary, I think was a great touch.
Yeah, I do
I think,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess another thing that we can probably talk about is any episode recommendations for the Fox Kids version of Beetlejuice the animated
Well,
series.
the one thing that keeps coming up from people who, I talk with and also looking at online, I mean, they say that the season finale apparently is quite a good one because it shows Beetlejuice, in his split personality, like, the good side, I guess you could say, of Beetlejuice and like the horrific side. Like Beetlejuice could be worse,
Hmm.
effectively, if he had no like, good side to like, keep him in check. So apparently people do like the season finale on that of of doing that. I don't know, like I would have like again I'm nitpicking because when these shows were being produced, I mean like Nickelodeon obviously always demanded this from their shows where it's like we don't want there to be like an ending to this show. We want it to be where where we can have a group of episodes and we can air them out of order if we want to, and there's no way for like they like kind of like what Disney are kind of like doing now, which I think is a huge mistake. I think because they've had Gravity Falls, they've had The Owl House, and they've had Amphibia. They've had three really great shows, and I guess you could include Molly McGee, I guess, in there to a degree. And now they've gone on to these other shows, and they're not, no one's paying attention to them
Oh,
effectively.
oh, oh, don't even get me started on Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Well, Middle Girl and Devil Dinosaur is sort of different. Well, that's a Marvel really thing rather than kind of like strictly like Disney animated television.
That's
But
fair enough, but
yeah.
still.
Well, so, I mean, like, Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur effectively is like, is what's carrying this right now. And also, there's just been the recent announcement that, there's not going to be any more Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur after season two,
Yeah.
which I think is really sad. But anyway, I digress. It would have been nice if you had like you put I love animated shows that when you go for the season finale, you put your two character your bunch of characters that you've grown over the show through like their biggest test. Like, they all need to get together. Like, the Neitherworld's about to collapse, or the human world's like getting sucked into the Neitherworld, and all the characters need to get involved in order to like save the day. Like, this big thing. Weird Mageddon, I think, is probably like, the best finale, I think, where with the exception of the Owl House, obviously they had those that unfortunate situation with season three, which I think, was an unfortunate situation, I think, and wasn't really planned. I think, so in a way, I'm not saying that it's not good, but I'm not, because it was kind of but in a way it was kind of rushed. At least with Gravity Falls, at least Weird Mageddon had an opportunity to like breathe. I think
Yes.
with that, which I think out of all the shows that I've watched, between the three, I actually do like Weird Mageddon probably the most.
Hmm.
I think out of all of them. But anyway, I digress. So it would have been kind of cool with Beetlejuice the animated series if they knew that the show was going to come to an end. So they're going to do like like kind of like what they what Craig Bartlett was going to do with like Arnold Saves the Neighborhood. They're going to do like here's episodes 90, 93, 94, and 95. Like here's like the three episodes that we're going to end on, which is going to be like the big finale for like it's the big send off for Beetlejuice, and like settle like our characters like in their with their ending, if you will. Even Bucky Ahead of the Toe Wars even got that, even though like it was like just the first run of the comics,
Hmm.
when there was actually more run of comics they could have gone with. But anyway, I'm actually kind of a fan of like saying, okay, let's do this big massive finish for the show, and unfortunately they kind of didn't really do that with Beetlejuice, and the only really finale we kind of get is that Beetlejuice splits in two and then comes back together again.
Yeah.
So
Which actually already happened before in the ABC run where
exactly,
Beetlejuice,
yeah,
by the way, they in this particular season, Beetlejuice loses his body parts a lot.
he
Like,
does.
yeah, he loses his feet, he loses his hands, he gets rid of his funny bone, his brain and his eye. It's like, there's a lot of episodes in which he loses body parts and he tries to get it back, and the massive repercussions of it happening.
Well, I think that's great because in a way, I think the problem with the ABC show is that you'd have Lydia go through like a crisis in some way, and like then you would have effectively like Beetlejuice effectively would be Superman, and he would come in and save the day, and there was nothing that could basically stop him. In the Fox Kids version, they didn't make him invincible. Like there's times where Beetlejuice couldn't use his powers because of something that would happen in the Neitherworld, so it would stop him from using his juice, or he had like a limited amount of juice that he can only use, and he basically runs out of it.
Or in one episode in which he was in a world where he wasn't allowed to use it.
Exactly, yeah. And then also there was the part where, where he said, I'm coming a part of the seams, and like, the bad guys all came together to steal bits and pieces of him, and it was up to Lydia and, part of Beetlejuice to effectively, bring him back together again.
Yes.
And so I don't know, like it would have been kind of more cool if they did something where, in fact, maybe they could have played the season finale, like, he's been apart for a while, and only just on the very brink they managed to save him. But because of that, like, he's lost a lot of his power, and he has to be very careful now when he does Beetlejuice. Kind of like, we had Edith from the Owl House, like, she let the curse like devour her effectively. Now she can't use her magic because of that. Like, it would be kind of cool if they kind of did that a bit with Beetlejuice, where it's kind of like, oh yeah, like he's now kind of like he is quite powerful, but he's still got a weakness, and like, oh, he's got to be very careful, like when he's Beetlejuicing now.
Yeah.
Like that would be kind of cool. Like, and then they could have played that for the series finale, maybe. Like Beetlejuice, maybe he does like disappear, and like the Netherworld and the human world are gonna like come together again. So all the characters, including the antagonists, have to come all together to like save their world effectively and get Beetlejuice back to order to like make the world a better place. There were so many great ideas for a season finale, at least in my idea. I'm really I'm not saying they had those ideas at the time, but I'm suggesting there's things they could have done with this story that I think could have really ended it really well. I think, and that's just me nitpicking effectively. So
Yeah, I've read like two or three articles of people who are listing up their favorite episodes of Beetlejuice the animated series, and the one episode that is constantly being brought up was What Makes BJ Run, which is the episode in which when Mr. Monitor cancels Beetlejuice's show and Beetlejuice wants to go back into the top so that he can be able to get his show back, he steals one of the male workers' story bibles of all the great ideas. He takes advantage of it, makes a lot of money, and then essentially he becomes like this massive jerk, and then all of a sudden, oh, he runs out of ideas, and so now he's relegated back to the bottom again.
I think that's a reference. When did Back to the Future 2 come out, actually?
Back to the Future 2, that would have been like 1989.
Oh, so I guess it would probably be a reference to that movie, maybe?
Yes, it was.
It was like, yeah, because, you had Biff obviously has like, the handbook and
The almanac.
yeah, the almanac, yeah. And so he knows who's going to win what game. And so he makes a ton of money out of being, betting all of that. And so, if anything, it's kind of like that. But then it was interesting, really, because we never got to the point where it's like, well, what happened if Biff ran out of the, what if he ran out of like, out of the book?
Well, I
Like,
mean, yeah, because it lasted until the year 2000. So it made you
yeah.
wonder about like, is he gonna like store all that money away, or is he gonna try to like
Yeah, because
maybe?
he lived a very lavish lifestyle, didn't he?
Yes, he
So I
did.
guess like I don't know, but the thing is that anyway, going back to what I was saying before is that the great thing about it is that Beetlejuice the animated series could reference movies, TV shows, other characters and stuff like that, but still like it wouldn't take over the entire. It wouldn't be the whole identity of the episode. It would be just part of the episode, and it would have a good story around it.
Yeah.
And so Beetlejuice the animated series, whether it's the ABC version or the Fox Kids version, did that very well.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess another episode that was also like poking fun of a lot of these particular tropes, but was able to make this interesting episode was in Super Zeros when they were making fun of the superhero genre, and they were making fun
That's
of
way ahead of its time, isn't it?
they were making fun of the comic book genre as well, where Beetlejuice felt like, oh yeah, I want to make a lot of money, so let's take a look at this comic book superhero trend, and I want to be a part of this huge convention. Oh, comic book convention where people are popular. Oh, I want to be that, and so he creates this superhero called Ultra Beetleman, and he hires Lydia as his little Cub Scout
Girl Scout
reporter.
recorder, yeah.
And then, he basically just, tries to fight crime, but no, he actually ignores the crime. And Lydia's the one who's rescuing everything. And then it turns out that the heroes that we see are actually the villains.
Yeah, and at the very end of the episode, it's Lydia who, like, is the comic book hero, like, is the Cub reporter, like,
Yes.
which I think is just absolutely hilarious.
Hmm.
It's like, So, yeah, I mean, there's a few other episodes I think in season 4. I mean, King BJ obviously was another one that people kind of point out. The Miss Beauty Juice pageant I think was also a hilarious one as well. And
Oh, that
yeah,
episode. Okay, yeah. So Beetlejuice wants to enter into this pageant so that he can make a lot of money. And so he makes this argument that, oh, why can't I be a part of it? It's because, well, he's a guy and it's only women who are allowed. And so then he tries to throw this protest that everybody can be beautiful, even guys, even slobby, gross creatures,
that
even
this was
Harry.
the thing that was happening with beauty pageants at the time because, the Fairly Odd Parents also kind of like did this as well because obviously Timmy Turner's dad wanted to enter into the contest, and then Saved by the Bell also kind of did this as well. And obviously, I'm pretty sure they did that episode so where Mario Lopez could effectively show off his muscles. But I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I noticed that actually that there were episodes in shows in the early 90s like saying, well, you got all these beauty contests, but why can't the men take part? Or why can't anybody else take part?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there were probably some people who are looking back on this episode is like, oh wow, this episode was actually really progressive for his time. But then when you realize, no, Beetlejuice is only doing this for the money because of course
Of
he is.
course he is. Like this is the thing. I love how if anything, like Beetlejuice has like a lot of Eric Cartman, and it's there's always like an ulterior motive to some of the things that you do. You think he's like doing things like, for example, like there's the baseball episode where he's part of the baseball team, but he's not actually wanting to be part of the baseball team to win the game. He actually just wants to do it so basically he can get endorsements.
Yes.
Effectively, actually funny enough, that's a sort of kind of modern, for modern sports personalities at the moment, really, they're just there for the endorsements.
Yeah, pretty much. I
Yeah.
mean, I cannot tell you, right before I left America to go to England, I went over and did some shopping at Old Navy, and there was a whole section filled with Lionel Messi shirts, shorts, jerseys,
I just remember
everything.
Michael Jordan was the guy, who was shilling all all the merchandise.
Not anymore.
No, anymore. No, well, I mean, he's still an entrepreneur, which doesn't surprise you really, but yeah, I mean, he was Uh, I mean, I think Usain Bolt, I think he did it at one point. I think various other, sports people did it. I mean, also, no, no, I mean, look, it's free. It's for them, it's money and advertising, so they're going to say no, are they?
Yeah, so
So,
it's yeah, I mean nowadays it's all about Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. Like
well, that's
all
Ronaldo, ever since he went off to Saudi Arabia. But I mean, anyway, that's besides Beetlejuice.
yeah.
But the idea is that Beetlejuice would, obviously, only do things because there's a financial incentive towards them. And by the way, that's quite a few of the episodes actually that you and I picked out, I think, for all of this.
Yeah, like another episode that was also very similar was Ghost Rider in the Sky, where he thought, okay, I'm gonna write this autobiography about myself, and I'm gonna make up everything and lie, and I'm gonna become a bestseller. And he does, but at the cost of everybody hating him.
And by the way, that's not the only time that Beetlejuice massively stretches the truth because we have a lot of flashbacks of his high school days where yeah, he absolutely utterly stretches the truth.
Yeah, this happened twice actually. Once when he was
I refuse to believe that Jacques was fat at one point.
no, I don't. I mean, especially since, he's a skeleton. I mean, how does a skeleton become fat? I mean, I know the joke about like he's
He's big
big boned,
boned. Yeah.
but no, no, no. Anyway, so yeah, there was one time in which when Beetlejuice became the prom king, and he went out with like the most attractive prom queen ever, but then it turns out to be a robot.
Sure. It's well, I mean, it was kind of cool. He hijacked the whole prom, to, with a fake, prom date and, won the prom king because of it.
Yeah.
That's Beetlejuice. That is just him in a nutshell. That's the part of it I personally do believe.
And then the second one was that he wanted to distract Lydia from cleaning out his house because his house is turned into a rainforest. And so he tells this very elaborate story about how he and Jacques were able to find, what was it, Jules Jern or something like that instead of Jules Verne or Verne Jules. they were able to like locate his books so that they can be able to find the jewels, the buried treasure. And no, that didn't happen either because it turned out that the little handle that was part of the treasure chest was actually from his drawer.
Of course it was. It was a complete distraction to the fact that his whole house was basically becoming a jungle.
Yes.
Yeah, I love how like this was the point where like Lydia was starting to become more animated, and people actually point that out on social media, saying, "Hey, this is a moment where like where Lydia effectively was like doing like anime tropes at one point." Like,
Yeah, and again, this isn't the first time that Beetlejuice had to tell stories to distract people because you have the sappy ghoul scouts. Oh, by the way, we forgot to mention them, where, there were essentially like these three little kids who are very sadistic. They're kind of like the prototypes of the Oogie Boogie kids from Nightmare Before Christmas.
well, they brought these kids in effectively to be like the opposite of like the Happy Girl Scouts. Yeah.
Yes, because they were selling cookies, and then eventually they decided to like stick within the group, even though they don't sell it anymore. But yeah, there was one episode in which when Beetlejuice had to watch over them, and they wanted to basically like destroy everything, destroy the house, destroy Beetlejuice, and then Beetlejuice decided to distract him by telling these fairy tales and these old fables, and insert Beetlejuice and Lydia into the story and kind of like make up as they went along and just going absolutely insane. And then the kids were entertained just long enough for them to not kill him again.
Again. Yeah, so there's a lot of fun episodes in the Fox Kids version,
Yeah.
and the only thing I would say is that you have to ignore the continuity errors. That's the one thing I would definitely say.
Yeah.
So
The episodes with Donnie is actually really great too.
yeah, like well, I think Donnie actually appears. I think he appears in 3 episodes. I think
Two.
2 episodes. Okay, so
Yeah, he appears in Donnie. He appears in Oh Brother, which is his first introduction, where Donnie comes over and Beetlejuice wants absolutely nothing to do with him. He tries to get him out of the house. He tries to blockade his house, and then Lydia is telling him, Beetlejuice, he's your brother. Be nice to him. And then eventually he does, reluctantly, which it makes a lot of sense because it's Beetlejuice. I mean, what do you
yeah.
expect it to be? And then the next episode, which we mentioned earlier, Midnight Scum, is when Donnie is a wanted man because he's planting all those trees, and Beetlejuice wants to turn him in for a
Yeah,
zillion
we
dollars.
mentioned that earlier in the show.
Yeah. So yeah, those are the only episodes that Donnie appears in, but those are really great episodes, though.
Yeah, exactly. And but like this, the one thing I'll say about the Fox Kids version is that I mean, it is where Beetlejuice turned all the way up, and so yeah, I think you start off with the ABC version, and that gives you an introduction to Beetlejuice, and then when you're finally ready for the heavy stuff, you finally go to the Fox Kids version of the show.
Yeah.
And this is actually one of the, dare I say, this is actually one of the very few series that manages to pull off 100 episodes, and it gets better the longer it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they actually were able to learn a lot of what they were able to get away with, and they just expanded on it. They expanded more of the characters, and we got more episodes with the monster across the street, where now he has a girlfriend. And then there was this one episode in which they broke up, and Beetlejuice, decides, okay, I'm just going to, make this guy even more miserable. Let's just put him on a date show and have him, date versions of Beetlejuice who are absolutely awful. And then Mr. Monitor says, "This is a hit. Let's do this again." And the monster across the street is miserable. And then the monstress across the street is watching. She's jealous. And then she wants him back. And then they break up. And then she wants him back. It's insanity.
Yeah, some of the weaker episodes, I think, of the Fox Kids version, I think the Don't Beetlejuice and Drive episode, I wasn't really too keen on.
I wasn't keen on it either, especially since, Beetlejuice is going to scam people where he's going to be giving off these fake driver's licenses. And I mean, you have these two detectives who are just so stupid and incompetent that they don't realize the crime in front of them. And Beetlejuice was so easily going to get away with it, but then Doomy, having a heart saying, "No, no, we are actually the one responsible for it." And then they still don't believe it. And then Beetlejuice basically confesses, and then he gets arrested. And then there's this other plot point that gets thrown in that is just like, okay, now Beetlejuice gave one of the licenses over to this bank robber, and then the bank robber's arrested, and then Beetlejuice is off scot-free. Yeah, it was just too much to handle.
Yeah, also like the fact they're like doing like the whole like the cops like narrating like in the background like like they're doing like in the cop shows. and stuff like that. Like, they also did that in Fish Police as well, and like it's not funny. Some of the the monologues that were kind of going on really,
I mean,
and
I guess
yeah.
the thing that was kind of funny was that they were able to say the times wrong, like 29 o'clock or something.
Yeah, so even then, like it was just this that was sort of a little bit of a chuckle, but I don't know, like the whole thing just kind of felt a bit drab, really. Like it's kind of like it's a bit disappointing of an episode when you have we have all these other wacky adventures that are currently going on, like throughout the other 63 episodes, and then all of a sudden you get this. It's like, huh? It's like it's just it's. That I remember when the credits rolled, when you and I finished watching, it was like, huh, that wasn't as fun as all the episodes,
Yeah,
was it? Like,
no, not
yeah,
really. Yeah, I mean there was another episode that we were watching which actually literally bored us where when Beetlejuice and Lydia ended up into like the town that was like frozen in time and it was going to be slowly disappearing because once everybody fell asleep the town was going to be completely gone.
yeah, like that was a bit of a chore to kind of sit through. Really, it's like it was just them just yelling at people to wake up. Like
Yeah.
that joke had stopped after the second joke, effectively, but they kind of kept it going on as it was as far as it possibly could,
Yeah,
and
and
then
you're
yeah.
wondering like, why can't they just poof themselves out? Well, Beetlejuice can't work his magic and Doomy was completely destroyed.
Yeah, like it's you gotta feel bad for Doomy in this episode as well. Like he gets tortured
Yeah.
effectively in this, and it was yeah. Again, that was also not a great episode either. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there were some episodes. I mean, you can definitely tell that, yes, they were able to work a lot with what they had in terms of. It definitely shows when they had 65 episodes and it was done in less than a year. You can definitely tell that some of the episodes weren't given as much polish compared to others.
well, I mean, I would still say they're hilarious,
Yes,
in
they
that. I
are.
mean, like, because they, the jokes definitely still land, and I think the one thing, also on top of that, it looks like they were trying to shove in as much as they possibly could, and also they were cutting stuff for time because I don't think any time in the Fox Kids version, I think obviously you have the Lydia transition scene when she says Beetlejuice, 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 and they put on her dress, and it was like I love that whole scene. It's really cool. But I guess you never really see it anywhere in the Fox Kids version of the show. I
No.
think they just assume that people watch the ABC version of the show, so therefore they know what the deal is. Which
Yeah.
I think is a bit sad, really, because it would have been cool to they did such a really cool thing with the intro. Why couldn't they just do a really cool transition scene? And so it also they've cut it for time, but yeah. So
Yeah,
that's sad that they had to take that out of it. But
that is pretty sad.
yeah.
Yeah, but there were some episodes of the show which there were some moments that we actually kind of like chuckled with each other because we kind of like thought of some dirty moments in ourselves.
Oh, what was that?
Like you remember when they went into that cruise ship and Beetlejuice was pouring himself a drink and he put something in it? What did you said it did look like?
Oh, I remember now. He put something into it, and we paused it at the wrong moment. It looked like he put a condom inside the drink, and it was yeah, yeah. There was some things that really needed to be caught. I don't know if maybe they probably did that on purpose. I don't know, but and also there was moments where they were obviously there was I'm pretty sure they hid dirty jokes in some of these episodes as well.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah, they did. And I mean, obviously, this will continue on, obviously, throughout, 90s animation, fingerprints, if you remember from Animaniac.
Yes.
So, this will be nothing new. But yeah, I just think that there were some unintentionally hilarious moments that were also in Beetlejuice, as well, which also kind of makes the show fun in a way because it's fun to find these things, and it's oh wow, that probably would have been had a past before, but now in today's context, it actually is really hilarious. So yeah, I love finding stuff like that in shows.
Yeah. And of course, you can definitely tell that they were wearing their love of Looney Tunes and a lot of classic cartoons on their sleeve. Like you remember the Poultry Guys episode where you had the chicken that was completely rotting in the fridge and just
Oh,
wanted to
that's
get
brilliant, isn't it? That's droopy, isn't it?
yes.
You have this this chicken that just the poultry guy, so he just can't get rid of, and no matter what he does with it, we've seen this whole skit with Droopy and what's the name of the wolf?
I think it's just known as the wolf.
Those known as the wolf. Yeah, we've seen that so many times with that. that duo as well, and like to see it out in like a 90s cartoon, and you can tell that. In fact, there's a lot of like homage to like the classic cartoons, because this was at the time when not all the classic Warner Brothers cartoons had basically been transferred over to TV formats at the time. Like, they were still like, sitting there in cans of film, in the Warner Brothers studios, and it wasn't until like later on that they started making television,
Well, they actually
so.
started airing them around the late 80s in Nickelodeon, if you remember.
Exactly, yeah, but it wasn't until then that we actually got to see them in the TV.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
or you got the VHS tapes and they were all on there. So, the fact that Beetlejuice was willing to pay homage to classic cartoon shows, like from if anything, that kind of helped things along, because, and also you had a. I mean, it wouldn't have worked with characters who couldn't do what Beetlejuice could have done. Don't get me wrong, like, you can't do this with, like, any single, character. And also, there's only one cartoon. Remember, like, after 9/11, obviously, they did the South Park, and they did sort of, like, the Looney Tunes thing
Oh,
with
yeah.
Eric Cartman and Osama bin Laden. I mean, there was
Yeah.
that. I mean, you could get away with, like, characters with that, like, because obviously, that's part of the joke, and that's sort of like what South Park is sort of like. But, I mean, with other cartoon shows, unless you had someone who had, like, the same abilities as Beetlejuice, you couldn't really do that with, like, any other cartoon. Or the only other cartoon character I could think of that you could do that, get away with doing that with, is the Mask, effectively, with the animated TV series as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, but Beetlejuice is able to actually do that because it has the aesthetic in order to do it.
Right. Yeah, so I think that the Fox Kids run was able to pull off some really great things. I mean, sure, there are some moments in which it stumbles a couple of times, and we did find some weak episodes, but for the most part, I still say that it's a pretty solid
Well, besides
run.
the two episodes we mentioned before, I mean, like, I enjoyed the rest of it. So
Yeah, I thought that the rest of it was actually pretty good too. I mean, I do love all the spoofs. Like they did the Wizard of Oz spoof.
they did Indiana Jones.
They did. Oh God, the Indiana Jones. They did the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
They
Oh, the Twilight Zone episode was quite fun.
yeah, that
And
was
the fact that they freak you out at the very end, and like, so they mentioned that, oh yeah, they do these things at the end to like freak you out and stuff. It's like, then you kind of realize, oh wait, did Beetlejuice actually leave the TV? It's like, oh good grief,
yeah.
that was cool.
Yeah, that was actually pretty cool. And of course, It's a Wonderful Life, just like we mentioned earlier. And yeah, I mean, they were able to poke fun of all of those things. They were able to just say screw you to the 1990 Children's Television Act with all those episodes that were like referencing, oh, everything needs to be nice and wholesome and cute. And I mean, that little fairy girl that was there.
Well, also on top of that as well, they actually made like an entire world called Neitherworld was effectively that. And, like, it was just like cutesy, and like it was like, if anything, it was like the Neitherworld's version of hell effectively. But it was kind of like made into like this cute sort of kind of like thing that you would see, make fun of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they even have a version of it in. I don't know if you've seen Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F, in which.
I've never seen any Dragon Ball, so
Okay,
you're talking to the wrong person here.
okay, never mind. But yeah, there is something akin to that with one of the major villains of the series, in which they go and they're super evil, but they're sent over after they die to this really nice cutesy world where there's just like talking animals and it's nice and sunny and all that kind of stuff, and they're absolutely miserable anyway. But yeah, so I guess they're poking fun of that trope of like, okay, we need to have our characters go into this nice world where they're not going to be mean, they're not going to be jokey, they're not going to pull off a whole bunch of pranks, they're just going to be smiley and all that kind of stuff. They references not only with the fairy godmother, where she was trying to do all of that, but they reference it twice with the Neitherworld, with that fairy girl who was this drill sergeant who was trying to make everything just so nice and precious. And again, you can definitely tell that the 1990 Television Act really affected the writers, in which they just wanted to say, well, screw that.
By the way, the just sorry to switch, just to go back to a previous topic, but the condom joke that I made before is on the episode called Ship of Ghouls.
Oh yeah, where Beetlejuice and Lydia go on this cruise, and they
Yeah.
and they end up in like this Bermuda Triangle place, and they meet up with a bunch of pirates, and the pirates just basically wanted to throw Beetlejuice off the plank unless they made fun of they made jokes, and Beetlejuice pulls off that Rodney Dangerfield character and makes a whole bunch of jokes, and everybody's laughing.
Yeah, like on top of that, like it's the Bermuda Triangle, but apparently I can't remember what the joke was, but when they go into that triangle, everybody like automatically starts wearing shorts.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Sure.
hmm
I guess it's the Bermuda shorts, like, oh, when you get in there, you wear shorts, and the pirates loved it. And when they left it, it's like, oh, we're miserable because we're not wearing shorts anymore.
yeah.
Sure, why not? Yeah, so yeah, I would say that if you have not checked out the Fox Kids version of Beetlejuice the animated series, I would say definitely go check it out.
Now let's ask the big question:
Wha-
um, the ABC version or the Fox Kids version?
Oh, that's a tough question.
It is a tough question, actually, isn't it? I mean, okay, everybody, for those of you who are really confused right now, we've got a bit of an explanation. And as you can see, I've got a completely different cap on and a completely different shirt on, and Patricia also look quite different as well. Actually, also my beard looks different as well. Yeah. So let's just explain what happened. So we were doing this podcast and we were editing it, and somehow we lost like the end of the podcast. I don't know exactly how to explain what happened. The one thing I will say is that it's sort of my bad, because normally when we do these things, I usually like set an auxiliary recording to like capture, what's going on in a different feed, and then at least if we have any problems with the main feed, we would then be able to locate back to our original audio feed. I've not set that up yet in our new studio with the moment, so I've not had the chance to capture that. So in the meantime, eventually, we're still sort of like sorting everything out here at, for Old School Lane and the Aaron Meta show and everything like that. So you're going to have to bear with us, because there will be mistakes that will be made. And unfortunately, we won't have a very good way of kind of like, dealing with like, catastrophes like this. So I guess this is like, the first one we've kind of had, I guess you could say, for all the times that we have been doing Old Spook Lane and everything like that. So, I mean, I guess there's the first time for everything, and there's also lessons to be learned. So that's the reason why you're seeing us like in a completely different, look at the minute, because we're recording this at the time when effectively we lost the footage of the last time we did the podcast. So Patricia, do you want to continue on with what we were doing?
Oh yeah. Yeah, so the last thing that I recall us doing was we were comparing the Fox Kids version to the ABC version, and we were deciding on our final thoughts. Like, did we prefer the Fox Kids version or the ABC version, and how does the Fox Kids version stand on its own?
Well, here's my thing about this, and so just bear with me with this, because this is very difficult. As I said, like in when we originally talked about this, and that is that I mean, it's sort of difficult because I'm going to really nitpick at this to really make things stand out. The ABC version of Beetlejuice does a better deal of explaining its world, explaining who our characters are, introducing somewhat new characters to this. Not to say that the Fox Kids version didn't introduce us new characters; they definitely did. It gave us new antagonists, it gave us new side characters, and the such. But I feel that the ABC version, gave us like the introduction to the characters, the introduction to like, the world that it's set in, the setting in the human world, setting in the Neitherworld, all the transitions, everything like that. The Fox Kids version misses those things, and I think the Fox Kids version just assumes that because the ABC version exists, that means that everyone who is watching Fox Kids will have been watching ABC, will immediately know what they're looking at. And I think that what's, in my opinion, and maybe you'll have a different opinion from this, but I think that goes against the Fox Kids version a little bit, because you somewhat have to assume you know what's going on because you've watched the other seasons of the show. Now, if you remember, there's been other shows, I mean, there's been rare other shows that have like jumped from like network to network, but then they've actually like explained what the world is in all of this. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, as much as I do not like brand spanking new Doug, in regards to that, at least it made somewhat of an attempt to explain the world that it's in, and all the changes that I basically have taken in, and sort of like explain the origins of our characters again. At least it made an attempt to do that, at least in the when we started off the show. And some other shows that jump from network to network make an attempt to explain who they are and what they're about, and give an explanation to, and just assumes that the network that they're going on is going to be full of new viewers who have never seen the show before. Beetlejuice doesn't do that. Like, I think it just jumps in and just assumes, oh, this is Beetlejuice and you should know what's going on. And with the ABC version, it did actually give us somewhat of an explanation of what this world is all about.
Yeah. And I have to say the same thing that even though that the ABC version was very limited with all the stuff that they were not able to do, I always say this, limitation breeds creativity. Even though that the ABC version may have not been as wacky and may have not been as crazy and may have not been as self-aware compared to the Fox Kids version, there was something in the ABC version that the Fox Kids version lacked, and that was it had a sense of balance where you got to visit both the human world and the Neitherworld. You get a focus on Beetlejuice and Lydia, where for the most part, Beetlejuice on the Fox Kids version was mostly a Beetlejuice focused show, which I understand that he's the title character and he should be the main focus. And if you were to watch the movies, Beetlejuice is not the main focus. It's either Lydia or the Maitlands or Astrid or any of the humans. Beetlejuice is never the focus. He's just an additional part of the story that just becomes really, really wacky. And the Fox Kids version decided to take advantage of that. But the issue is that there's too much of a good thing here where it's just too over the top and it's just too wacky. Whereas in the ABC version actually gave us some genuine heartfelt moments and it gave us some moments that we can say that we can easily relate to. Well, I mean, yes, I know that for the most part, Beetlejuice is supposed to be a comedy. It's supposed to make you laugh. It's supposed to make you, giggle at all the funny jokes, whether they be the puns or whether it be the gross out humor or whether it be all the crazy little gags. And yes, I mean those things are great in the Fox Kids version, but I really did miss that balance in the ABC version, and I also miss some of the characters that we didn't get from the ABC version to the Fox Kids version. Like, it would have been nice to see Cousin BJ around. It would have been nice to see Prince Vince from time to time. But here's the thing. I mean, there were some of the new characters from the Fox Kids version that we did get. So we got more development with the villains like Scuzzo and Mr. Monitor and Jesse Germs
I think
and
Mr. Monitor was only in the Fox Kids version. He wasn't in the ABC version.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like at least in the Fox Kids version, they were able to give some additions that we didn't get in the ABC version. So yeah, we did swap out Prince Vince and Cousin BJ and other characters, but at least we got some new characters into the mix, which I did really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate that with the Fox Kids version having that creative freedom, they become a lot more self-aware, especially with all the things that were happening in the time. I really did enjoy those parts. But yeah, I would say that if you were to tell me which do I prefer the Fox Kids version or do I prefer the ABC version? I'm gonna have to say I prefer the ABC version.
Yeah, I say I actually prefer the ABC version as well. And so the Fox Kids version, I felt like keep this in mind. The aim demographic of Beetlejuice, whether you and I like it or not, is the 6 to 11 demographic. In fact, that's what a lot of the shows that you and I talk about is for the 6 to 11 demo that existed during the 80s and the 90s. That was the target audience. The problem with this is that you could tell they were trying to do kind of like adult commentary at the same time. And the problem with that is that I mean this will might fly over the heads of a lot of kids at the time unless they were like really really switched on. Like and for a kid who is growing up in the 80s and the 90s, like to be aware of media industry news is pretty rare, to be quite honest with you. I mean, obviously there was the jokes in the Animaniacs saying where we're breaking the wall on censors, and we're and there's various other shows that also made fun of the censorship as well. Freakazoid also did that too. In fact, a lot of Warner Brothers shows actually kind of push the limits in regards to all that kind of stuff, including Batman the animated series that has a very dark and very sometimes violent scenes in it. So I mean, Warner Brothers I think it was obviously leading the charge in regards to what you could do when you push into that demo. But I mean, unless you really were aware of all the shenanigans that were kind of going on at that time, and the Parents Television Council, and all the people getting outraged over the smallest of things on television that they found objectionable, and funny if South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut was effectively was a massive commentary about that. Effectively, so unless you're kind of aware of those things, I don't think the Foxy's version of Beetlejuice, I think, does itself justice. Compared to the ABC version, where it's kind of containing itself within its own world.
All right then. Well, how would you score this?
Um, the Fox Kids version, well, I would say that I mean, it's definitely a lot more. You and I looking at it as adults, I mean, I definitely say that, the commentary definitely holds up. I think we can definitely say that. And, it's a lot more wacky. It's a lot more, there's a lot more shenanigans going on. I mean, I think you and I think previously, I think we said, what, 8.5 out of 10, I think, for the ABC version of Beetlejuice. I mean, well, as much as fun I did have with this show, after going through all the flaws comparing to the ABC version, I mean, I probably got to say, I'm probably leaning towards an 8 out of 10, I think, for
Okay.
that. So, I mean, I will take off half a mark, I think, compared to the ABC version. But, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some things that there are to find in the Fox Kids version of the show. Definitely, if you're a fan of the ABC version of the show, just don't expect as much as you'd like. I mean, there's a lot of like commentary for like you and I as like nerds who like to delve into like the industry and like to see like all the things that were made fun of back in that time. But I've got to be honest with everybody. I mean, as if I was looking really critically, I think of the show, I think I'd have to say I'd give it an 8 out of 10 compared to the 8.5 out of 10 I gave Beetlejuice the ABC version.
Yeah, and I'll have to give it a 7 because I gave the ABC version an 8 because while they were able to push a lot of the boundaries of what they could be able to do compared to the ABC version, unfortunately, it just loses a lot of the heart that made it so great. I mean, I really did enjoy the dynamics of Beetlejuice and Lydia. I really did enjoy some of the lessons they were able to learn. And that's not to say that the ABC version doesn't have the humor. It does. There were several moments in the ABC version where we were just laughing so hard. And I say
On
that
top of that, they actually gave us a bit of, angst between, Lydia and Beetlejuice, where to say that, there's times where they don't get on and they sometimes don't see eye to eye on things, and then they have to kind of reconcile that. So kind of develop their relationship in that regard as friends. And not to say that, it doesn't give us those moments, but I just think that they should have, if they were going to give us stuff like that. I mean, again, I get it's an 80s show, and we weren't at the point where, we had Gravity Falls, Amphibia, and the Owl House. Obviously, they push the boundaries, and various other animated shows push the boundaries in the 2010s. And so, I mean, obviously, there's that. And Beetlejuice obviously is handicapped by that. It'd actually be interesting to see what it'd be like if they did Beetlejuice in, here and now, in or maybe in the 2010s or in the 2020s. I'd be interested to see what would happen if they did a version of the show in that time.
yeah,
I don't know.
that is if they gotten the same people who had worked on the original to come back for this.
Which would be very, very difficult to do, I probably would imagine. A lot of people have probably moved on from then.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, I'm glad that you brought this up. I'm gonna, bring it up later on in the show. But yeah, I'm finishing up my thoughts of Beetlejuice the animated series. Yeah, I do have to say that in terms of the episodes, yes, I do say that there were some great episodes in the Fox Kids version. But knowing from the Cracked article that they had to rush season 4 within less than a year and a half, you can definitely tell that there's a little bit of repetitiveness in some of the episodes. Like Beetlejuice loses his limbs a lot, and there's some episodes in which it just feels a little bit derivative. Like we've seen this before in either the ABC version or we've seen this in a few episodes ago.
Well, I think we brought this up earlier in the podcast. I think that actually you mentioned Beetlejuice's Funny Bone like twice, and
Yes.
so it's great. There was a lot of continuity errors in this season,
Yeah, and that's what
compared to the ABC version of the show.
yeah, and that's what happens when you're rushing through the productions of 3 episodes every single week, having to have it done within a year and a half, and in addition to that, doing another season for a different network. I mean, there are gonna be some moments in which some things are going to be not as tightly done. So, yeah, I
I'm
think
sure there's going to be people here who are going to be saying, "Well, Batman Beyond was done in a short period of time." It's like, well, yeah, Batman Beyond. I mean, there was already the Batman the animated series to kind of fall back on in regards to a structure, in regards to a format, in regards to how you're going to bring the thing forward. Also, where you could easily evolve Bruce Wayne's character, into regards to that. That's besides the point. The point is that you've got to produce, and how many episodes was Batman Beyond? It was only it wasn't 60, it wasn't like 64 episodes. I don't think, if I recall.
I don't think so. Maybe
No,
I think it was like what, maybe 52?
maybe something like that. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, even if it was that, I mean, it wasn't it wasn't the fact that Beetlejuice, spread out to in regards to its entire run between ABC and Fox Kids was 94 episodes. Eventually,
Yes.
you're gonna get burnout in that. I mean, we did see it a couple of times. And don't get me wrong, every single show has its weak episodes. I'm not saying that it doesn't. Where the Owl House, Amphibia, Gravity Falls, even Over the Garden Wall, I think, and some of the other episodes, there were some weaker episodes in that, but doesn't mean that the gems aren't worth, we're digging up. And in regards to that, I agree that the short period of time, I mean, is putting too much pressure I think, on a lot of the developers and producers of the show. And really, it needed to breathe a lot more, and you could tell that it was overloaded in certain places.
Yeah. So I have to say 7 out of 10 for Beetlejuice the animated series. In terms of the Fox Kids version. The ABC version, I do really enjoy a lot of what we were able to see with that one. Now, for those who have only grown up with the Fox Kids version and have never seen the ABC version of it, I would say give seasons 1 through 3 a chance. It may be a little bit slower and it may not be as wacky compared to the Fox Kids version, but you will definitely see the humor and the heart in there.
That's a great question. Has anyone actually seen only the Fox Kids version of the show and never seen the ABC version? I'd be very surprised if that kid exists out there, to be honest with you.
I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case because they aired the Fox Kids version of Beetlejuice a lot more than the ABC version.
Oh wow, because I might be wrong about this as well, but I only recall on here in the UK seeing the ABC version of the show. When I saw the Fox Kids version of the show for the first time, it's like wow, this is like a whole brand new bunch of shows I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
It was cool. Like he's like, oh hey, Beetlejuice is back. I'd never seen these before. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I guess we want to tighten up a couple of things that we noticed right before we close this podcast. There was actually one episode of the Fox Kids version where a particular voice actor played as one of the characters, if you remember.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was Paul Akins who plays as King Koopa in the Super Mario Brothers Super Show,
Yes.
and that was quite surprising. Really, I'm really surprised. Like, you had someone like him who plays a very nasty bad guy in the ultimate bad guy I think of our childhoods. Where King Koopa of all people, Bowser, if you will, and you decide to make him like one of the side characters of your show. If anything, I would have justified to make him one of the antagonists. I mean, to be fair, maybe at the time, they didn't realize how big the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, I guess, was going to be. I guess in people's nostalgia, like anyone who remembers the Super Mario Brothers cartoon remembers the rap and remembers Do the Mario and everything like that. But one of the things they also remember is King Koopa as well, and because Paul did such a fantastic job doing his voice, and when I heard him, it was like I know who he is, and so we had to look him up, and and behold, it's old King Koopa himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that I've noticed a lot of people posting on social media, I guess, at the recording of this podcast, we had just came out of the election, so they were just reminiscing on the episode "What Makes BJ Run," in which Beetlejuice runs for mayor and he becomes really, really corrupted.
Yeah, and so I guess I'm not going to go too far into all of this because I'll have my own views about this on my own particular podcast. But I think we can safely say I think we would rather have Beetlejuice in the White House right now rather than what's going to be coming up soon.
Didn't you do like a chat GPT about this scenario?
Oh yeah, I did, and one of the ideas is that Beetlejuice would run for president against Donald Trump, and he would basically, I think he was like give everybody some kind of gift for if he voted for him, stuff like that. We would just yeah. Even then, Beetlejuice for president, I couldn't fathom, I really couldn't,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the discussion of Beetlejuice, the animated series.
Well,
So,
I guess there's one question I think we could also tag on to the end of this, just as a closer, is that, I mean, we've seen a lot of TV shows come out. Now that we have Beetlejuice, and we
yes,
know that it's done pretty well
yes.
in the box office, do you think there might be a TV executive who's looking at it saying, hey, there was a TV series for Beetlejuice based off the first movie? I mean, could they do a TV series based off of this one? Where you have Astrid and Beetlejuice effectively as and maybe you throw in that'd be interesting. Like if they did a show where they came back and Lydia's all grown up now and now it's Astrid and that's his daughter, and so Beetlejuice is gonna have fun with Astrid, and they're gonna have their own adventures, and Lydia's still gonna kind of be there in the background and say it could be kind of like Return to Neverland in it, I guess, in a way. Maybe I'm not entirely sure. Maybe Astrid, is doesn't want to be too friendly with Beetlejuice, but Lydia's sort of kind of somewhat encouraging it, but then sort of understanding. Yeah, he does go a bit too far from time to time. I'll have a word with him. It's like that.
Well, that is if they go into this direction. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to go into a more darker direction, like what we've seen in recent years, where stuff like Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss tends to go into a more darker direction.
Yeah, but I mean, that's more let's say Adult Swim decide to pick it up. I don't know, but if they decided to do an adult cartoon of Beetlejuice, where maybe they probably would go in a darker direction. But if we're talking about 6 to 11 demographic. It's going to appear on Nickelodeon or whatever. It's going to or it's going to be on Netflix. It's going to be a kids show, effectively. You can't really do Beetlejuice, like, to the T in animation format. I mean, you probably get away with a lot more, of what Beetlejuice could do. I mean, that's the thing I think that makes Beetlejuice the animated series sort of work, because there's a lot of things that you could do in the animation world with Beetlejuice that you couldn't do in the real world. So maybe if they do like an adult version of cartoon version of Beetlejuice, maybe that'd be really cool because they could get away with too much more doing more stuff. But I mean, to be honest, if you're gonna do 6 to 11 demographic, if you're gonna do it on a kids network, or if Netflix is gonna say no, this is for the kids and this is gonna be that, you gotta do something like Beetlejuice, or maybe make references to the old Beetlejuice show. I don't know.
I mean, they'll be really interesting considering that over 35 years ago, we used to have cartoons that were based off of like movies that were clearly too old for children. Nowadays, we don't have that. In fact, having a cartoon based off of a movie is almost an endangered species, with the exception of maybe like a superhero cartoon like the Marvels or, anything like that. We don't really get to see a lot of TV shows based off of movies anymore.
Yeah, and well, I think that's I think in regards to things like Beetlejuice, I mean, like I wonder, like I was only wonder like what a Nightmare Before Christmas TV series basically would be like,
Mhm.
or what some of the other stuff that Tim Burton has done, what they be like, as TV shows, like which right now I can only point to like Beetlejuice the animated series in the 80s, and probably dare I say, I mean, like Tim Burton wasn't involved in Batman the animated series, but you can definitely tell like the darkness and like kind of like the more lower tone. I think you could say it was based off the Tim Burton Batman a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, I think you could probably argue that. I mean, let's be honest, like, they're based off Adam West. I think you and I would probably be talking very differently about Batman the animated series.
No, 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 no. That's Batman the Brave and the Bold right
Oh yeah.
there.
Well, no, I think they did actually do. I mean, a Batman like I think that was one of the last things Adam West actually did.
Well, that was a movie.
Yeah, that was a movie. Yeah, but they did it in the style,
Yeah,
which
they
I
did.
think I'm not actually seen that yet.
I haven't
Actually,
seen it either.
no. So, but anyway, that's what getting besides the point. But the point is that if you did do Beetlejuice as an animated series today, if you did it as an adult cartoon, obviously it would be far more to the movie, which I think is a little bit of a shame, really, because I gotta be honest, I have a soft spot for Beetlejuice the animated series now after watching it, and I actually would like to see them do that type of style again with the modern movie.
Yeah.
Like a 6 to 11 demographic. They do that. I think a lot of people actually would like it.
Yeah.
I think, and also definitely there are some of the stories from I think the original ABC version. Definitely that one where Lydia and her dad bonded a bit more. At the end of that episode,
Yeah.
I think has a really great message. If they do more stuff, things like that, I think it could be a really good show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so that's our discussion of Beetlejuice the animated series. Thank you so much for tuning in. Right before we go, I just want to do one quick plug. So, as we talked about in the ABC version, that one of the showrunners for the animated series was a guy named Ted and Nancy. Now, he currently has an Indiegogo page because he's going through health problems at the moment. And so, if you are interested in helping him out, I will leave the link in the description box below so you can be able to donate a couple of dollars to help pay for his medical bills. He is currently going through some memory loss and he needs some help so that he can be able to pay for things like some medical care, going over to a home so that they can be able to take care of his needs. So if you really love stuff like Beetlejuice the animated series and a lot of the stuff from Nelvana from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and you want to show off your support, please help him out and it will be really, really
I
appreciative.
also want to say this, and that is that a lot of these cartoons that you and I talk about, these people took us through some pretty hard times. Growing up is very difficult, as you and I, know. And one of the things that we found solace in, effectively, was, our cartoon shows that were on TV. And unfortunately, now a lot of people, from that era have fallen on hard times and really do need our help. We obviously talked about, the Francesca Smith, crowdfunding that happened, a while back, and also there's been various other, crowdfundings that have been done for people who, have fallen on hard time. So I really just want to say that if you ever do see, someone from your childhood that is trying to make it to the end of the week, I mean, obviously, give a little bit back and say that, hey, I did appreciate everything that you did for me, all that entertainment that you provided to me, when I was growing up, and helping me kind of like understand the world that's around me. So, yeah, definitely do give, when you see one of these things. And so, I would definitely say, click on the link below and, help out as much as you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I guess on a lighter note, look what I got. I
Oh,
found this at the
yeah.
grocery store. So yeah, we got this little nice Beetlejuice plushie
I
here.
don't know if it made it into the original cut, but also we had the Beetlejuice gummies as well,
Oh,
and
no,
but
no, it
yeah,
didn't,
it
sadly.
didn't actually. Yeah, unfortunately, they're in my drawer at work, which I'm going to eat them soon. So if I do get a chance to take a picture of them, I will do. But also the one important thing I think we should also point out though is the DVD right here, the Beetlejuice complete series collection, and there is actually is this the Shout Factory version
It
of
is.
it? Yeah, so there is actually another version of it, isn't there?
They're
I think.
they're the Warner Brothers
The
version.
Warner Brothers version, yeah, so that's also as well. And also, I mean, if you really are less enthusiastic for this show and really want to spare, like, part with a ton of money, you could get it on Apple TV. But I got to be honest with everybody, like, I would say it's not worth it. I mean, like, I would say, like, if you are a massive, massive, massive fan of Beetlejuice and you want it in your Apple TV collection for some reason, then obviously pay the $60 or like how much money it is basically to buy every single episode of the show. But I've got to be honest with everybody, there are cheaper alternatives, and probably getting the DVD or probably watching it if it comes back on Tubi again, or if it does come in a place where you can part a couple of dollars for it to like either rent it or buy it. I would probably recommend doing that, but that's
Absolutely.
just me.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the last time that I checked, there are a few copies left on Amazon because if you guys know from the past month, Beetlejuice the animated series was like completely being bought over 700 plus on Amazon and then another 700 on eBay. So this stuff was going really quickly. And I have to remember that the Shout Factory version is practically out of print. The only way you can be able to get this version of Beetlejuice the animated series is if you get the last
By
printed
the way,
copies.
if you have got the Warner Brothers version, please let us know in the comments what's the difference between that and the Shout Factory version. I would be interested to hear about it.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that is it for our discussion of Beetlejuice the animated series. We got one more bonus podcast for you to check out, and we hope that you'll really enjoy that one.
Take care, everybody, and sorry that we've had to basically tape together this podcast, but.
All right, bye now.